moment I picked up that paper from my doorstep, my life took a turn into a corridor of unending dread. The words, "Beware of what's behind you," written in a hurried scrawl, felt like a bad joke at first. I half expected to turn around to laughter, or a friend jumping out to startle me. But instead, there was just a shadowy figure, barely discernible among the trees bordering my property. The moment our eyes met, if you could call it that, given the distance and the darkness, he vanished. I tried to laugh it off, attributing it to a local prankster with a flair for the dramatic. 2 days later, the same eerie greeting awaited me, but the messenger was conspicuously absent. I scoured the tree line, a mix of annoyance and a prickling sense of unease crawling up my spine. Probably got scared off, I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. But the events didn't stop. Another 2 days passed, and yet another note appeared, this time without any sign of the stranger. The unsettling routine began to gnaw at my sense of security, transforming my home from a haven into a stage for this macabre game of cat and mouse. I considered calling the police, but hesitated. What would I report? A series of notes and a fleeting figure? It sounded ludicrous, even in my own head. The breaking point came unexpectedly in the dead of night. The sharp, insistent knock at my door jolted me awake, heart hammering against my ribcage. I rushed to the door, flinging it open, only to be met with emptiness. A chilling breeze brushed against my face, carrying with it the unmistakable metallic scent of blood. There, at my feet, lay another note, my name scrawled across it in blood, a stark, terrifying confirmation that this was no prank. Panic took hold, a relentless grip that wouldn't ease. I found myself wandering the streets at night, shouting into the darkness, desperate to confront whatever specter had fixated on me. My actions stirred the town, my fear becoming their spectacle. Sleep became a distant memory, and every shadow whispered threats of unseen horrors. In a last-ditch attempt to reclaim some semblance of peace, I left. I moved towns, changed my routines, and even my appearance. But the fear, the haunting memory of those notes, and the figure lurking in the shadows followed me like a curse. I started seeing shadows moving just beyond the light, hearing whispers in the silence of my new home. The fear of being found, of receiving another blood-stained warning, became a constant companion. Now, as I sit in my dimly lit room, miles and years away from where this nightmare began, I can't shake the feeling that it never really ended. Every knock on the door, every unexpected shadow, sends a jolt of fear through me. I wonder if it will ever stop, if I'll ever feel safe again, or if the warning was more than just a threat. It was a prophecy, a glimpse into a life forever overshadowed by the fear of what might be lurking just out of sight, always behind me. The day we moved into 47 Hawthorne Avenue was supposed to be the beginning of our dream life. The house, a sprawling Victorian beauty, had been on the market for years, and by some stroke of luck, or so we thought, it became ours. My wife, Anna, and her 2 kids, Max and Lily, were ecstatic. The previous owner had been eager to sell, and we never questioned why. In hindsight, that was our first mistake. Our first week was filled with the chaos of unpacking and making the house our own. It was during this whirlwind of activity that we received the first letter. No return address, just a plain white envelope placed directly under our front door. I remember Anna handing it to me, a puzzled look on her face. "Must be a welcome note from the neighbors," I had said, tearing it open. But it wasn't. The handwriting was a meticulous cursive, almost beautiful, but the words sent a shiver down my spine. "Welcome to 47 Hawthorne Avenue, the pride of my heart. I have watched over this house for decades, long before you arrived, and will continue to do so. I know the house's secrets, and soon I shall know yours." Anna laughed it off as a prank, but I couldn't shake the unease that settled in the pit of my stomach. We decided not to tell the kids, not wanting to scare them. We locked the doors that night more tightly than we ever had. A week passed without incident, and the letter was almost forgotten. Almost. Then came the second one. This time, the message was more invasive, more menacing. "I see you've settled in. I watched you eat dinner last night through the dining room window. Lovely family you have. It's a shame they don't know the history of their home. Do you think they'd sleep as soundly?" This time, we called the police. They took the letter and promised to look into it. But there was little they could do without a return address or any fingerprints besides ours. We installed security cameras the next day, hoping to catch a glimpse of our watcher, but they never appeared on film. Letters continued to arrive, each more disturbing than the last. They described intimate details of our lives, things that could only be known by someone who spent hours observing us. Our sense of security crumbled. We stopped letting Max and Lily play outside. We drew the curtains tight, but still, the letters found their way in, slipping through the smallest cracks in our fortress. One letter detailed the exact layout of our bedroom, commenting on the photos we kept on our dresser. Another described a scar on Anna's back, a detail so private it sent her into a panic. The watcher claimed to be everywhere, always observing, always writing. The tipping point came when a letter addressed to Max arrived. It spoke of taking him away, of showing him the true owner of the house. We decided to leave that night, packing only essentials, determined to escape the invisible gaze that haunted us. We stayed at a hotel under assumed names, but even there, we weren't safe. A letter was waiting for us at the front desk the next morning. "You can leave the house, but you can't leave me," it read. The police were at a loss. Without any physical evidence, they couldn't trace the letters back to anyone. They patrolled our street, interviewed neighbors, but nothing came of it. The watcher was a ghost, untouchable and unseen. Our dream home became a prison. We put it on the market, but who would buy such a tainted property? The letters had made it impossible to sell, and we were financially trapped. We moved back in, defeated, with no other options. That's when the gifts started arriving. Small toys left on our doorstep, old and worn, as if they'd been buried for years, and only recently unearthed. Each came with a note, a reminder that the watcher was still there, still watching. Months turned into years, and the letters never stopped. We learned to live in a constant state of vigilance, jumping at shadows, flinching at the sound of the mail slot opening. The watcher became a part of our lives, an unseen member of the family, always there, always watching. The final letter arrived on a cold December morning. It was heavier than the others, and inside we found a key and a single sentence that chilled us to the bone. "Now, I am ready to come inside." We never found out who the watcher was. The police increased their patrols, but nothing came of it. We live with the curtains drawn, the doors locked, and the fear that one day we'll come face to face with the person who has tormented us for so long. Our dream home is now our cage, and we are forever watched. The first night I babysat for the Harrison family should have been uneventful. Their house, a charming, albeit slightly outdated 2-story nestled at the end of a cul-de-sac, seemed like the perfect setting for a quiet evening. The parents, Meister and Mrs. Harrison, were attending a late-night dinner party, leaving me in charge of their 2 children, 8-year-old Molly and 6-year-old Sam. The evening began like any other babysitting job. We played board games. I made them their favorite macaroni and cheese for dinner, and we watched a movie until their bedtime. The children were angels, hardly the type to fuss when it was time to turn in. After tucking them in and ensuring nightlights were on, I settled down in the living room with a book, the house quiet, except for the occasional creak and groan of its settling bones. That's when the phone rang. I jumped, not expecting any calls, especially since the Harrisons had left their cell numbers on the fridge, and any emergency calls should have been directed there. I answered, a knot forming in my stomach. "Hello?" Static hissed through the line for a moment before a whisper broke through. "You shouldn't be here." The line went dead. Assuming it was a prank call, I tried to shake off the unease that crawled up my spine. I checked on Molly and Sam. Both were sound asleep, blissfully unaware. I returned to my book, telling myself it was just a random call. But it rang again. This time, the voice was clearer, more insistent. "Check the basement." "We don't have a basement," I replied, a mix of fear and confusion lacing my voice. The Harrisons had never mentioned a basement, and I hadn't seen any doors or entrances that suggested one. The call ended abruptly again. Curiosity overcame fear. I began a methodical search of the house, looking for any sign of a basement entrance. In the back of a hallway closet, obscured by coats and old boxes, I found a small door I had initially mistaken for a built-in cabinet. It was locked, but a set of keys left on the kitchen counter earlier revealed one that fit. The door swung open to reveal a steep staircase descending into darkness. My heart pounded as I considered the implications of the calls. Were they a warning or a threat? Steeling my nerves, I grabbed a flashlight and descended. The basement was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was a fully furnished living space, but with bars on the windows and a heavy, locked door on the other side. And there, bound and gagged, were the real Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. The story unravels as I learn that the people who hired me were imposters, part of a larger, more sinister plan involving identity theft and extortion. The real Harrisons had been kept captive for weeks, their lives threatened if they didn't comply. The calls, it turned out, were from a disposable cell phone the real Mr. Harrison had hidden in the basement, hoping someone would discover them before it was too late. The police arrived. The imposters were arrested, and the Harrisons were freed. But the trauma of that night lingered. I had walked into what I thought was a simple babysitting job, only to uncover a nightmare hidden within the walls of a seemingly ordinary home. The aftermath was a blur of police statements, news interviews, and sleepless nights. The Harrison children were found to be part of the ruse, coached to act the part of the loving offspring. The depth of the deception was chilling, a stark reminder that evil can lurk behind the most benign facades. I never babysat again, haunted by the memory of that night and the terrifying realization of how close I came to being another victim of their twisted game. The house at the end of the cul-de-sac stood empty after that, a constant, eerie reminder of the darkness that had unfolded within its walls.